my name is Dakota, and today I'll be giving a speech over the information on how video games have evolved and how they have become what they are today. With a show of hands, how many of y'all play video games on a regular basis? Right? I can see the majority of us play video games, but how many of us really do we know where they came from or how they came to be what they are today? Video games have been around for more than 50 years now, and they began in 1952 with OXO, or better known as tic-tac-toe. In 1958, Tennis for Two came out, or better known as Pong, created by Atari. That was released on Visitor Day at the Brookhaven National Laboratory in New York. In 1967, the first console was released by Sanderson Associates, who was led by Ralph Baer, and they called it the Brown Box. Baer is also known as the father of video games. He is known this because he led the project which ended up creating the Brown Box. They sold the system under the name of Odyssey, which came with 28 games already on the console. Inspired by one of the games on the console, the Brown Box, Atari created Pong, who was then later sued by Megabox, who ended up settling with Atari, but along with suing multiple other organizations and receiving over $100 million in copyright infringement claims. In 1983, there was a major crash in the video game industry, and this was due to too many consoles being released, along with the computer games becoming more popular and the lack and the low quality that video games were being produced for consoles. This was turned around a few years later, though, when Nintendo released the Nintendo Entertainment System, better known as the NES. The first console war, though, began in 1991 between Sega and Nintendo, when they both released a 16-bit display for their consoles. Sega was the first company to release a violent video game, where they released Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat. This led to Sega creating their own rating systems for their video games, and then later the ESRB being established to rate all video games, and is still established to this day. In 1995, Sega released the first console that could play a CD-ROM instead of having to have a cartridge. Then this caused Sony to want to get in on the competition and release the PlayStation 1. However, the PlayStation 2 was the first console that ever dominated the industry, as it could play DVDs along with the games from the PlayStation 1 and the new games coming out on PlayStation 2. This brings us to the modern age of gaming. The modern age is what we have mostly grown up with Microsoft releasing the Xbox 360 and Sony releasing the PlayStation 3. Both of these were high-definition gaming consoles to keep up with the TVs that were coming out at the time. After those had come out, TVs started to release 4K, which is a better version of a high definition. And so Microsoft and PlayStation both raced to be the first competitor to release a 4K console. Sony won, releasing the PlayStation 4, and Microsoft released an Xbox One a few months later. The next step in video games will be virtual reality, most likely. And this will probably consist of you wearing a headset along with having two controllers that sense the motions of your body. Now, we've seen video games come a long way in the past 50 years or so. We're not exactly sure what will be in the future, but we're sure it will be something that sweeps you off your feet. Thank y'all very much.